Let me introduce our first presenter. Google the phrase journalism and AI, and definitely one of the first hits you will come across will be Nikita Roy and her influential podcast, Newsroom Robots. The robot theme inspired all of our roundtable graphics. Nikita Roy is a data scientist, journalist, Harvard-recognized AI futurist. She's currently a Knight Fellow at the International Center for Journalists, focusing on AI literacy in the news industry. Additionally, she leads the AI Journalism Lab at the Craig Newmark Graduate School of Journalism at the City University of New York, which was launched with support from Microsoft. Nikita is going to lead us through an opening workshop, essentially which covers generative AI, like a 101 course for journalists. I think Nikita thought it would be really useful to try and get us all on the same page, because we're all at different places right now. So Nikita, the floor is yours. You can use the podium if you wish, or you can grab a mic and kind of float around.
Is that working? What? Walk this way? This is the only place I can be then. So either the podium or here. Is that? Can I move around? Okay, perfect. Hello, everyone. So great to be here with all of you, and thank you for having me, Allan. As Allan was mentioning, the first focus I thought was something that's important for us to have a conversation about AI, for us to understand what AI is, and specifically what generative AI is, because there has been a lot of noise and a lot of hype over AI taking over the job of a journalist and what the roles of AI looks like in a newsroom. And so I think it's really important for us to have that foundational understanding of how generative AI right now is helping journalists. And that's really the goal that I have from this 1 hour that I have with you today. I'm going to go over basics of what generative AI is so we understand how to do a 101 introduction and explain generative AI to people. And then we'll walk away over here today with 20 different ways in how generative AI tools are helping journalists right now and how it can help you as part of the news industry. And so that's the goals for today. I want us to just actually quickly start off with, and that's not working. There you go. You already know who I am, but I want to get to know the room over here. So I have a quick Slido poll. So if everyone just pulls out their phones for a second, you will have a QR code over here. We'll have a series of 3 questions on the Slido poll. So if everyone just goes in the QR code and you put in Toronto AI, just want to know how familiar are you with text generation tools? And can we hide the results till we get a few people? Yeah. So just want to know how many of you pay for any of these tools, like ChatGPT, Claude Pro, Google Gemini, Microsoft Copilot. Have you been using it in the past few months? Never used it. Tried it once when ChatGPT came out, and that's it. You were like, I don't want to do it anymore. It's not useful. And okay, I think we can show the results. We have about like 20 people. Let's see. I am so impressed with this group, and I think maybe because it's an AI journalism group, this is beating records. I've never had nearly 40% of the people actually paying for AI tools whenever I do it. And the number with I know what they are but haven't used them, that usually averages around 40%. So this group is already ahead of the curve, and makes sense because we're a select group who wants to come and talk about AI journalism today, so there's a bit of selection bias there. But can we move on to the next question? I just want to know about AI-powered image generation tools, like Midjourney, DALL-E. Have you been playing around with those as well? Let's see. Okay, maybe you can show the results now. Let's see. Okay, never used, 33%. It's a tie between tried it out sometimes, never used. I find this is just a good way for us to understand everyone else as well and where the room is at. And if you have never tried it out, you know that there are a lot of people in the room who haven't tried it out yet and still have different, still exploring use cases. But I think the conversation for us about why do we need to talk about generative AI as journalists right now is so crucial for two reasons. And the first one is that because as journalists, I think we owe it to our audience to be one of the most informed citizens on AI. This is something like electricity. It's going to be foundational and embedded in every single path, application, everywhere you go, every single industry, generative AI is, especially generative AI, is getting embedded. And as journalists who are covering, even if you're not covering an AI and you're not a tech reporter, whatever beat you're covering is going to have AI that you need to understand and need to know how it's impacting that particular beat. And you need to be critically thinking about it. And that's what our audience needs from us in this moment of time, clarity and the knowledge and ability to critically analyze how AI is impacting industries. And the second thing is AI is actually a huge, huge booster for newsrooms. It is absolutely transformational in the way in which it can help speed up efficiency, make you more productive. And we've seen this a lot. I was just talking to a journalist in Norway, and they were talking about how AI has been helping their newsroom not just produce articles and do stuff quicker, but produce better journalism because they were able to find insights and uncover insights that they were not able to do before without the power of generative AI. And that's a small 20% newsroom in Norway that's now able to have a higher subscription rate. They got a record subscription rate just because of the fact that they were so deeply embedded in AI, using generative AI tools, especially for helping them uncover data and insights from the municipal data, from government sources. And these were things that they never had the power to do before. And that's one of the biggest use cases for generative AI for journalists. And we need to know how to use them. And so that's the whole reason I think it's so important for us to be in this room today and have this conversation. And I want to just get into another one more poll. So if you have your phones out, in a second, as Allan said, you have to start off every journalism talk with showing your AI avatar, right? But I want to show you an AI avatar and decide which one is the original me and which one is the AI version of me. And I think, again, it's important to know how it is so difficult now to distinguish. In a second, you'll see a split screen video. One side of the video is me talking. This was actually shot at a broadcast studio for the International Center of Journalists Tribute Night last year. And another one was an AI avatar that I built in 10 minutes saying the exact same thing. So decide which one is me. Let's see.
Disinformation is more sophisticated and harmful than ever before. I am one of the thousands of journalists working to fight it with ICFJ's help.
Okay. Is it the left one or the right one? Which side of the screen? In a second, if you can just put back the poll, the Slido poll, and you can put it. And can you hide the results as well? Can you? Yeah, let's see. Be a surprise, because yesterday I did it and about 75% of the room got it wrong, and that was a record. Let's see how it is over here. Usually it's around 50% of the room gets it wrong, but okay, let's show the results. Video on the right side of the screen and video on the left side of the screen is 33%. Okay, well, we have failed. So the video on the right side of the screen was actually AI. And so nobody could actually distinguish the real version of me. And I'm talking about it, and again, the reason why we need to see how this is impacting us is because this is part of the media information ecosystem right now. Anybody is able to go and produce these AI versions and AI avatars, and you are not able to distinguish what is fake and what is real. And as journalists, that's so crucial, especially when you are looking at sources and verifying information. It's kind of impossible to do that when everywhere I go, no one's usually able to guess the right version of me when you see me standing and speaking to you, because that's how good these models have become. And I want us to get into Can you move to the back to the presentation, please? Thanks. And the whole reason we're talking about this is because this is what generative AI is capable of. There, generative AI is. It's a subset of artificial intelligence, but this particular one is generating outputs such as text, image, music, video. What you're seeing over here was the video that it generated by learning patterns from its input data. And so in here, what I did was I inputted this it was like a 10-minute video of me speaking that I had to upload. And with that, it was able to go and produce a completely new version of a video, an AI generated, by learning from the patterns, the way in which my lips were moving, the different ways in which like my pixels on the face are generated. They generate every single thing in the completely new version. And that's what AI generation and generative AI is about. So this is specific to just video generation that I want to talk about and help us understand where the landscape is right now. But the most important part that we need to talk about today, and I'll be focusing on, is large language models. This is what ChatGPT and all of these different foundational models you've heard of have been, is the ecosystem behind them, the technology behind them. They are extremely large models, so think about being trained on everything that's there on the internet and more. In addition to that, what's different about the technology of large language models is that it's trained to understand natural language and produce an output in that exact same text. And so now you are interacting with a machine, not by code, but just by plain, simple words. And that's what's so revolutionary about this technology and is actually leveling the playing field between technologists and people who don't know how to code. And then the third very important thing that as journalists we need to know how this model works is that it is all prediction. These are prediction engines. All that they were doing, as you saw, they learned from my input data and they predicted what was the pixel and how the words should move and how my face should move. And every single thing they are predicting, and the same thing is happening in large language models. They're trained to predict the most likely next word. So quickly, if you just see this sentence, my favorite animal is a, what's the first word that pops up in your mind automatically if you're predicting it? A dog, right? My favorite animal is a dog. That's what the model thinks too behind the scenes. Behind the scenes, based on everything that they have trained on, it's my favorite animal is a dog or a cat or a horse or a lion or a wolf. It's going to be an animal. It's never going to be my favorite animal is a banana because that's not what any of the input text that it must have been trained on is ever going to have. It's always going to be some sort of an animal. So if you go onto ChatGPT and you do my favorite animal is a, you'll most likely get a dog or some sort of an animal that it fills up. And that is the crucial thing to understand about large language models, because at the end of the day, what they are language generators. They are generating language and they are not generating knowledge. And these are two separate things that happen. There's a difference between language tasks and there's a difference between knowledge tasks. A language task, like summarizing an article. A knowledge task where you're actually going and figuring out to write a press release for something or write an article about this topic. That's where the job of a journalist comes in, because we are in the business of knowledge generation, of gathering knowledge, documenting history as it happens. That's something that is so uniquely human that is not possible with these AI models. And what it can help us is with language tasks, the different ways in which it can help us speed up the way we are doing our headlines and SEO, and we'll get into all of that. That's where it is extremely useful with. And so if you take away anything, I usually say it's this particular statement that you can keep in mind whenever you're using tools like ChatGPT. Because if you are using it for a knowledge task and going and asking it for information and getting it help over there, that's where you will risk getting wrong information. But if you're starting with your own knowledge and getting it to help with different language tasks, that's the right way to use ChatGPT. And I'm going to talk about the right and the wrong ways to use tools like ChatGPT. But quickly, why are we talking about generative AI and why am I talking about how transformational it is? Because there's been a lot of research done on how it's helping people. And there was a study that was done with Harvard Business School and the Boston Boston Consulting Group, where they took over 700 of their consultants globally and put them through this experiment and trial where half of them got access to GPT-4, the other half were not trained, did not get access to GPT-4, and they tested them on different tasks that they were doing. What they found was that they were able to find that the group that had access to GPT-4 and were using it produced 12% more work. They were 25% faster, and on average, they were producing 40% higher quality work. And not only that, what really stood out to me was that it helped the low performers. It brought them back up to the level of high performers, and actually high performers did not benefit as much from tools like GPT-4. It was mainly the low performers, which again, helps us understand when should we be using these tools. If you are really, really good at the work you're doing and a particular task, you are often better than an AI model. And you don't have to use generative AI just to use it. You have to know when to use it and why to use it, and a tool to make you better at certain tasks that maybe you are not as good as. And that's where generative AI has been helping the low performers come up to the high performers level. And from a business standpoint, you can just imagine how it's leveling the playing field again within your team. You are able to help boost your low performers to produce as well as your high performers. And that's the main reason I think there's so much of data showing how generative AI is helping people be more productive and be more efficient. And that's what my focus is on, and how can we do that in the news industry. But I am a realist, and I have to talk about the risks of using large language models before we get into all of the fun use cases, because as journalists, there is a lot of different risks that we need to be aware of. And the first thing is hallucination. So this is when a large language model is making things up that it's not true or it doesn't make sense. And again, why is that happening? Because it's a prediction engine. It's not a knowledge engine. It's not producing knowledge, it's producing language. If you go to it and ask it something that you would go and ask Google, it's gonna make up information. I call it an insecure intern because of this reason, because it's insecure and it doesn't want to ever tell you that it's wrong, and it wants to please you all the time. So you have to be aware of that. And it's an intern because you have to fact check every single information that comes out from there. If you are using it for knowledge tasks, and you have to be able to verify what your primary source, that's journalism 101. And then the second thing is memorization. This is another big issue with large language models, where they are trained, because of the way they are trained, they sometimes tend to repeat and remember stuff that it's been trained on. And this is actually at the core of the New York Times lawsuit against OpenAI, because the way the model was trained, the New York Times articles were so unique, and their Pulitzer Prize-winning articles must have been published so many places that it was repeated in their training data again and again, that they picked up certain patterns from that data and were able to now reproduce, these GPT models were able to reproduce them verbatim in their outputs. And so that's one thing to be aware of. And with all of that is my don't things. Don't do these with large language models. And first of all, don't use it like Google. ChatGPT is not Google. Generative AI tools are not Google. And they make up information, and they have the ability to hallucinate. And so that's a huge risk for you. Second, assume that every response you're getting are factually incorrect. Don't assume that just because, even when you give your own knowledge and you're doing that, you need to make sure that you're fact-checking everything, because the model, again, is predicting based on the knowledge you gave it, and it can make information up. So always rely on its language capability. And third, don't input any private or sensitive data. And this is because, again, going back to the problem of memorization, these models, we don't know how they're being trained. They tend to sometimes remember patterns. Like if you were giving your phone number and address and social security numbers, especially those things that have a very replicable pattern and is replicated a lot in their training data, it tends to generate that in its output as well. So you don't input any private and sensitive data unless you know that this model is not being trained on your, in conversations with it. And then finally, don't publish anything without checking for plagiarism. First of all, I don't think anything from a generative AI model should be going straight to publish, and I don't think that's the purpose of it. But if you were doing that, at this moment in time, if you're taking snippets of it, taking excerpts from whatever a generative AI model has done, and especially if you're doing it with a topic that has been spoken about quite a lot and has been written about a lot, make sure you are checking for plagiarism, because unintentionally, the model is, again, might have picked up something from its training data and is outputting that, and you might not be aware of it. And finally, the liability will fall on you as the user and not the model. And so you need to make sure that you're doing this as well. But I just want to talk about the 4 AI tools that we are currently using on the most accessible AI tools, and the top AI tools for people to use is, first of all, ChatGPT from OpenAI, which made the whole big splash. But we also have other tools, like Microsoft has their own tool called Copilot that's powered by OpenAI. You also have Google, Gemini from Google, and then Claude from Anthropic. And I, in fact, bounce around between all 4 of these tools. I have subscriptions for ChatGPT and Claude at the moment, and it bounces around from like, I want ChatGPT because of their very abilities to reason, and they have a lot of different features that is not available in the other tools, and so that's why I use ChatGPT. But Claude is the tool that I use the most for for writing purposes and helping me with those language tasks, because I find it to be the tool that's able to be the most natural and human sounding, and it sounds like my voice when I write it. This is the only tool that I've been able to train it to write in my voice, and so Claude is the tool that I use. So now getting to the fun ways of how you can use generative AI tools in your journalism. And so I'm going to go through 20 ways to use these tools, not just ChatGPT, but a bunch of them. And with the first one, I was talking about SEO and headline generation. There's actually a free tool called YesEO that's used in almost 400 plus local newsrooms. And it's completely free. You just have to go, as you can see over here, you are putting in your article, and then it's doing a keyword search based on that, but then you can also generate headlines with it, and you can also generate SEO meta descriptions. And this is one of the tools that a lot of, I would say, the larger newsrooms who started prototyping their own tools all focused in on SEO and headline. Again, language task, and that was the easiest way for them to boost people and their productivity, because a lot of the times, and at Hearst newspapers, that was actually their first generative AI tool, and I was speaking to the AI engineer over there, and he was talking about how they came up with this and why they decided on this problem as their first, and that was because a lot of their web editors, usually on the weekends, they were only writing one headline. They were stressed for headlines. They never were able to produce multiple different versions of the headlines to do A/B testing, and they were missing out on data. Now, with this tool, they are able to constantly collect data, because they're always having at least 2 headlines that are being shown about a particular story, and they are able to gather more data. That's one way in which it's helping, not just making them more efficient, but again, better quality journalism and getting them the data to see what's resonating more with people. Another way is summarizing information for PDFs. This is where you are giving the knowledge over here, and then I'm asking it, what are some of the key findings in this report, and then it's going and producing. You can also just now upload these PDFs into ChatGPT. You can go and upload them into Claude, Google Gemini, everywhere. You can upload PDFs over there, and it will give you a summary. As over here, you see this was over a 40-page document about this education report in Massachusetts, and I uploaded it, and it's giving me this entire summary of what that report was. And now I can go and continue engaging with it and ask, okay, now what are some of the key trends in student achievement and attainment? And it's, again, giving me a bunch of different information, all of these different stats. And so if I am doing research and I have a bunch of different PDF documents that I need to be looking at, I can see specifically which PDF is meeting my need, and then go further and do research from there. But again, like everything, I would fact check before I would use any of this information, even though I provided the knowledge. So if it's saying 3.2 million high school completers, I will take that 3.2 million, do a search in that PDF document, find out where exactly they're talking about, understand that context of that page, make sure it's correct and factually correct, and that the model did not get it wrong, and only then use it. Again, even though I'm giving it as my knowledge source, they tend to misunderstand and make information up, and so this is something that you need to be doing, even when using them as helping you with these kind of tasks. Then another one is creating charts to visualize data. So this is something that I find extremely helpful because I don't need to go in and go to an Excel file if I want to create a bar graph. All I need to do is copy paste, as you saw over here, and I told it to create a graph, and with this tool within ChatGPT, it's been able to create this very highly interactive graph that now I can just copy paste, put it into a presentation, or I can even embed it into a website. They have an embed code. You can go edit how this looks, the colors, the fonts, everything can be edited. And this was all done within, as you saw, it was a matter of seconds. I didn't have to play around with Excel, do any formatting, nothing. It did everything for me. And then this is my favorite use case, as I was talking about, using ChatGPT to analyze large data sets. This is actually a data set from the New York City's open data. They have over 3,000 open data sets, and I mean, Toronto has so many that we can play around with. I took this about traffic vehicle collisions, uploaded it onto ChatGPT, and I started asking questions like, straight away, like, what is this data set about? This was almost a half GB data set that you would not be able to analyze on Excel, for example. I'm a data scientist, and I could code and analyze all of this data, but this did the exact same thing that I would be doing, but much quicker, actually. And as you can see, over here, what's different is it's writing the code. So it wrote the Python code that I would be writing if I were to analyze this data set, and then produced insights based on what the output from the Python code was. So I asked it what the data set is, and it gave me all of these different variables. On top of that, I asked it to explore what are the different angles that I could take as a journalist. And so it said, okay, we can follow on these different aspects and look at the monthly trends and look at the borough analysis and time analysis. And so all I have to do is now ask those data questions in plain language. And it's producing a bar graph. I'm just asking which boroughs have the highest and lowest number of collisions, and when do most collisions occur. What's different about the data analysis part is over here, it's not generating text, it's actually generating code. And code is deterministic, like it has to perform and work, otherwise the code will not run and you will not get your outputs. And as a result, this tends to be a bit more reliable in the way they're analyzing the data. You, again, need to have a data journalist, fact check it, you need to have somebody else cross-reference, and if you know, that's where I think even if journalists right now just focus on learning just a little bit of the basics of Python and code, it can take them miles away. Just if you understand the syntax and the structure of what's happening, you don't need to code. You just need to understand what that is doing. And you can see the code and make sure and double check by yourself right now. And it's able to help you analyze all of these large data sets. In this demo that I do, a longer demo on just ChatGPT and data analysis, we actually found within 10 minutes of playing around this data set, found a particular location because there was exact geolocations of where every single collision happens in New York City. We found the particular location that had the most number of collisions happening in the year 2023. And we looked at the time, and everything was happening late at night, which was from like around 10 p.m. to 2 a.m., completely contradicting what the rest of the city's trend was, which is usually during 4 to 6 p.m. during peak hours. And that was just within 10 minutes of playing around with this data set that you had something that you could go and figure out what was happening in that particular area. Why were collisions happening late at night? Is it that there was not a stop sign, traffic lights, lots of people over there? That's where the real work of the human journalist comes in. You go and follow up on that lead. And that's where I think these tools are really, really useful, is that you are now able to access all the open data sets that are out there. It's your playground. Just go and figure out and ask questions and try and find leads and different connections, get them to brainstorm and ask you for different ways in which it could help you analyze this data set, and you have just opened up a whole nother set of stories that might not have been discovered previously because you do not have the capabilities, or your team was not having the capabilities to analyze data set. And at the end of one of those workshops, I had one of the journalists come up to me and he was like, I spent an entire day working on this particular data set, just trying to figure out how to clean it and work it. And what you did it in 10 minutes that it took him an entire day. And that's where the power is, making that hours of work into just minutes for journalists. And then one of my favorite ways, again, to use these tools is using it to chat with all of the YouTube videos that I never get around to, and I need to quickly get an update on what's happening, especially with all of these updates that come from these tech companies. I just go put in a link and tell it to summarize what was said in that press conference and what was discussed, and it gives me all of the different highlights. I use it a lot, actually, for helping me with my podcast, actually. A lot of my podcast guests I hear, but they have gone and spoken a lot, and they have a lot of YouTube videos of what they're speaking, and I want to get a fresh and new angle about what they haven't maybe covered in those videos. And so I usually go and get a summary of what all topics that they have covered over there, and then I take it one step further and actually brainstorm with these YouTube videos and try and ask it what are questions that I could go further into and what probably was not covered that could be covered in the podcast. And those are all ways, again, it's helping me be it's my little production assistant, like helping me with every single thing and outlining what are the different questions that I could be asking. And that's where I find it really, really useful to take these YouTube videos, not just to know what's happening, but then brainstorming with the particular YouTube video. And then translating articles is a very, very useful way. A lot of newsrooms are Spanish, French, German newsrooms using ChatGPT to help translate. It gives them a decent first draft that then they have to go and edit. But this is one way in which you can speed up your translation. And then this is also another way in which you can help brainstorm with interview questions specifically, especially if you're doing an interview that is tough, or in this case, this is something that I was doing last year where I had to go and interview a Ukrainian refugee. And I was like, you're trained on trauma-informed reporting. This is a difficult interview that I have not been used to doing. How do I apply those principles? How do I frame my questions so that I'm doing a better job as a journalist and interviewing them and making it a safe space for them? And ChatGPT was looking at all of the principles that they've been trained on and then giving me all of those example questions and how it upholds the principles. And then again, showing you different ways in which you can start structuring your questions and helping you out there. So again, helping me be a better journalist. And then writing alt text. This is another really cool feature now of these AI models where you can upload images onto them and they are able to interpret them, they're able to understand, they're able to see. It's like your second set of eyes now. You don't need to, like for alt text, for example, you don't have to sit down and write in alt text. All that you have to do is now upload it onto ChatGPT. Over here, I did it for my podcast social media post on LinkedIn and just uploaded it. And you can see how well the alt text is describing. If we were doing it with usually just like a line, but again, the people who require alt text and making accessibility should be a really prime concern of ours and a focus of ours. In addition to all of that, it's also making sure that we are producing good quality content for them. And this is one way in which you're seeing this more descriptive way in which ChatGPT can help with alt text. And similar with images, now because you're able to analyze those images, you can take it one step further, get feedback from them. You can upload, here's a Figma design, and I asked it for a news app, give me suggestions on what needs to be done for something you're creating for a Gen Z audience or a millennial audience. How would it resonate to them? What would you change and how can I make that better? And so that's what ChatGPT is able to analyze all of your design elements. It knows all of the backgrounds about like what Gen Z is like and the millennials like. And because it's been trained on so much of that information, it's able to take on those different personas and then go from there and produce these feedback responses. So that's another way in which I find analyzing images are really, really helpful. Again, they're my second set of eyes that can help analyze stuff for me. In addition to that, you can see again with the images, you can extract data from an image. Gone are those days when you see a JPG and like you are not able to get the text from that. All I have to do is upload it onto ChatGPT and it gives me all the text over here. I put this into Microsoft Copilot actually, and then it gave me this perfect table. And all I had to do was go, and you can save this as an Excel file because you can see right on the corner over there, save that as an Excel file and download it. And so that's one way in which, again, it's helping you speed up the way in which you're collecting data. Use ChatGPT when you want to create your own customized bot. So this is a new feature that is actually now going to be available to all the free users. This was only available to paid users previously, was this ability to interact with custom GPTs or so-called bots that are built on ChatGPT. And this is one thing where you can create now your own bot just by going and chatting with it and putting in a few instructions. What I did over here was uploading my podcast guest episodes and creating a podcast bot. Now I'm going to make that available because it's available to everybody. Now anybody can access it. Before it was only the paid subscribers on ChatGPT. Instead of going and listening and looking at the show notes, people can go and start and have a conversation about the particular podcast episode. So all I had to do was upload a transcript. People know who this week's guest is, what the main topics are. If they want to get more information on that particular episode, all they have to do is have a conversation. You can do this for anything. Upload any kind of knowledge file, and you're having a bot that you can talk to. A lot of people are experimenting with like their style guides or guidelines and their newsrooms and all of those different things that people need questions for, and they have to dig through this huge book maybe in PDFs, uploading that as a knowledge source that people can then come to and chat with it and create a bot. Now getting into the more, I would say, operational sides of news. We are a business at the end of the day, and we have to do ad sales. And so how can you get them to help you with ad sale pitches? This is one way in which I used Microsoft Copilot, telling it that it's a salesperson who's specialized in local businesses, and it needs to go and get me a business, create me a table and find, because Microsoft Copilot is connected to the internet, it's able to go and then search all of the different business names and industry sectors. And I told it to write me a customized email pitch that I can include in all of my emails. And that's what it did. It brought me 5 different businesses around Cambridge that I was looking at, and then the email pitch. And all I had to do was then, again, download it as an Excel file and was ready to go. I can take that one step further, and then I started asking, hey, where's their physical address and email address, and can you scrape the web for me? And it started to do that as well. And actually, all of those 3 ones that you see where the email address is not there is because those were actually very old websites, sort of like mom and pop shops, and they did not have an email address on any of their websites. And so the bot was able to go and correctly identify that and did not make up any information, because actually in my prompt, I told it, if you cannot find an email, just leave that blank, because again, the insecure intern, it's insecure, doesn't want to disappoint you. So you have to tell it that it's okay. If you don't know something, just leave that blank. And that's one way, and again, which I think it's really, really helpful to scrape information from websites. It does that pretty well. It's also able to understand that there were 2 different locations for Fromage Kitchen. There were 2 different locations, there were 2 different email addresses, and then giving me this customized email pitch that now all I have to do is download it as an Excel file, do a mail merge, and you can send things. And next, again, going into the more product side of a newsroom, doing a pre-mortem analysis. Before you launch any products, identifying what are the different potential roadblocks that are there and prevent it even from beginning any project. This was a project that we were doing where we were launching an AI literacy course media literacy course on WhatsApp. And before that, we were just like looking at what are the different roadblocks that would happen, and how can we mitigate it even before we start on that project. And so I think this is a way in which it's really, really helpful. It's not just in the editorial, it's in your product, it's in your business, your revenue. It's every single layer in a newsroom can have generative AI helping them in different tasks. Transcribing interviews, that is one of the most common things that I see journalists have been experimenting with. Otter AI is a popular tool that people use to convert speech to text. I have a podcast episode here, and I use Otter a lot because you can also go and chat with Otter, and now you're chatting with your transcript. So it's not just transcribing from text to speech. You have that added feature of within Otter being able to get information, getting it to summarize. You want to write an email at the end of the day with action items, you can go to Otter Chat, and it will write that email for you. In the whole transcription space, the tool that I tend to use a lot is Oasis. I call it, you can convert all of your like word vomit into articulate text, is what I say, is like all you have to do is open the app, start talking to it, it transcribes your speech into text, and then does whatever format you want it to be, it will convert it. So over here, it will make it into a blog post, a song, an outline, a professional email, a summary, a Reddit post, a LinkedIn post, whatever you want to create it into, that's what it's able to do. So you can prompt it to help you with like an interview outline. And I use it a lot when I am brainstorming and preparing for my podcast interviews and thinking through what are the different questions. I'm a better thinker when I'm thinking out loud, and so I just have Oasis record all of my thoughts and then start and create outlines for me and help me with figuring out how I would be asking my questions and all of those different ways. That's what it's doing. It's converting your thoughts into text and helping you be more productive and efficient. And then Perplexity. I think this is a tool that I want to touch upon because a lot of people have been using ChatGPT as Google, and I say if you really want to use generative AI tools as Google, go to Perplexity because this is a generative AI search experience that I tend to use. This is my actually default search engine that I go to and then go onto other sources. But as you can see over here, I asked a question about the OpenAI lawsuit with New York Times, and it's able to give me all of the information, bulleted point, these summary answers that are extremely, extremely useful. But what I find even more useful from Perplexity is the fact that I can go one step further, and it's giving me all of these related questions that I can keep asking. So it's not just a news article now that I'm reading, but it is also expanding the different questions and ways I can think about a particular topic. And so in 5 minutes, I know everything about the OpenAI lawsuit, but I know also about what does fair use mean, what are the legal challenges, who's using copyrighted content, what are opinions saying because of the different questions that start coming at the bottom. And if at any point I want to fact check any of this information, every single thing has a source. Every line you can see has a citation. I click on it and you can know where exactly they got that information from. Again, before I use anything or I'm going to speak about it, I always go and fact check that information because, as always, these are language generation tools and they are not knowledge. They do not know if they have interpreted that information correctly and put that out as a summary. So it's good to give you background information, but if you're ever going to use that information, go and double check the source. In addition to that, about Perplexity specifically, it's very, very helpful to search through videos. So you can now expand, not just searching through text online and websites, you can search through YouTube video transcripts, and there's a search video button that I find very, very helpful, and that's what I tend to use often. Then going into more of the video generation, our last two examples is Noda. It converts news articles to videos. This is being used by a lot of local newsrooms right now where you can create videos for all kinds of different platforms. All you have to do, put in a link to an article, and as you can see over here, it converts that entire text into video. You can go and create an Instagram reel, edit it however you want. It's putting in all of these different stock photos, taking images from your site and putting that as a background, and within a few minutes, you have an Instagram reel that can then now be published and convert that into a TikTok and a YouTube short and whatever you need to. And video, and especially vertical videos, are becoming so mainstream that we need to be able to not just reach our audience through text, but also through videos in so many different platforms. And that's what Noda is doing by helping so many local newsrooms. And then finally, Opus Clip. I find this really useful because there are so many long-form videos that we put out, webinars that are out, this video that's going to be out. We can convert them into shorts in a matter of minutes. All I did in this example was take this YouTube video of a talk that Sam Altman did, and within like 10 minutes, it generated about 20 shorts that can now be uploaded onto any platform. And in addition to that, it tells me it's ranked every single video and telling me why this is good, why it's not, what's the hook, why it is engaging or not, how can you make it more engaging. So if you are doing it for a particular talk, how can you make these videos the next time more engaging, the panels more engaging, all of those different ways, and also gives you feedback, I would say. So converting one long video into 10 clips. And this is currently one of my favorite tools to play around with, because you can within a second just get to know what are the top things maybe from a particular webinar or a panel that can be publicized and shared more widely through Opus Clip. And finally, just talking about like a checklist, because everyone's like, when do I use Gen AI? And I would always say, don't use it just for the sake of using it. There's always a need and a purpose that you're trying to meet. And it's usually my checklist of when I tend to use it. First of all, is it like a repetitive task? Am I doing this all the time, where Gen AI, if I can help me speed up that process? Second, is it text heavy? Especially with large language models, you are wanting to deal with text heavy. You're dealing with text heavy, and so it's helping you with the language generation. And then third, do you have context and information to start from? Because again, these are not knowledge tools. You have to provide the knowledge to help you with the language. So do you have that context and information to start from? Do you have specific instructions on how the task can be performed? Because then you can optimize the way in which these large language models are performing. And then finally, is it valuable for you to have a draft to start from? If it's not, it's probably not the right use case for you right now. You're probably better off writing that article by yourself, because you know you can do a better job than the model. So don't use Gen AI. But if it is, then that's good. That's where maybe it can help you with the first draft so that you are able to get to the final output much quicker. And that's it from me today. If you want to learn more about how AI is being used in media, you can check out the podcast. We also just launched Newsroom Robots Academy with AI literacy courses that we are working on. Jeremy Kaplan, who's also speaking later on today, is collaborating with me on that, and we are expanding AI for journalists and media professionals to learn how to use these tools. Because to be honest, I feel like ChatGPT just gave us these tools and decided to go with it. But we have to figure out how to use them. And that's what I think is really important, to learn how to use these tools the right way. And there are so many ways in which it can help you boost your productivity and creativity. And so I hope this was useful. Do we have time for questions?
Yeah, we have time for a few questions, and I'm going to try and get some mics around. Do I have to turn these on, or is it just?
Thank you. Hello?
I don't know.
Hello?
Yeah, I think that's
Thank you. My name is Randy Kitt. I'm with Unifor. I just had a question about inputting into AI. So, we were saying don't input your proprietary information. So if I, on the transcript side, for example, so I've just done a long interview with you, and at some point you had said, oh, can we do something off the record, for instance? And I say, of course. And you say, well, Jim Rankin's wearing a green jacket. And then that's the off the record information. It's not to be known. And then I just dumped that whole thing at the end of the 2-hour interview into ChatGPT. Now everybody can find out what color jackets Jim is wearing. Is that something we got to be careful about how we input into ChatGPT, right?
Yeah, exactly. You need to be careful, but I'm going to have a few more distinctions in what needs to be done when you're using tools like ChatGPT, because there are different layers to that. ChatGPT, the free version, and the consumer version, they are training their AI models on those conversations, and You can disable that, but I don't know how. Like it takes away one of the big features of ChatGPT, which is you having a history of your conversations with it, so it's not very useful. But if you're using it, and this is where newsrooms and enterprises are using it, is that they have ChatGPT for teams, ChatGPT for enterprises. It's about $10 more per month, but over there they're not training on your data. So they say. There are a lot of different closed ways in which, like Microsoft Azure and Google Gemini, they're giving access directly to their models. And so enterprises are using that and building their own ChatGPT-like interface and giving that access to tools like Azure and stuff. But also, there's like a whole different thing we can talk about running small language models locally on your computer, and that's a whole different thing. But that's where it is, especially for investigative journalists. It's not just going to these tools like ChatGPT, but you can run language models through certain tools and interfaces just on your computer, and you can transcribe them on your computer, so it never has to leave your computer, and you can be disconnected from the internet, and it's all running locally. So there are options even beyond just that.
Any other questions? Yes, right here, and then I'll grab a mic.
Hey, Nikita. Is Claude available in Canada yet?
That's true. I think Claude is not available in Canada. I use a VPN and use it from US because I love Claude, and I'm in the US a lot. Yeah.
Oh, hey, Nikita.
Yeah.
Angela from TMU. I've created a couple of custom GPTs for my student newsroom, and I'm just wondering have you seen any success with sharing custom GPTs for like things like style guides in newsrooms? Have you seen any of that out in the real world, I'm wondering?
Yeah, a lot of people are prototyping on that and using style guides. Again, now you can share them, those custom GPTs, so they don't need to be a paid user. And before they had to be a paid user to access those GPTs. But as of yesterday, it's completely free to access GPTs that you've built. So I think we will see a lot more adoption and lots more people talking about how it's useful. But that's one of the first use cases that everyone's trying out, is creating style guides for their newsrooms so that they can ask questions.
Thanks so much. Mackay here from Global News. I think we were all taken aback a little by the video that you showed off the top and talking about generative AI generated videos and arming our teams and journalists with tools to be able to decipher what is legitimate and what's not. Are you aware of any technology that's working to combat fake videos online, or are there things that journalists can start to look for off the bat that might indicate that content is not legitimate?
There are a lot of people working on that solution, but nothing is reliable. That's the short answer. And that's just because of how these models have been trained. You cannot say whether it is AI generated or not. You get like false positives, false negatives, and all of these like big different issues. So, and also the clues that were there last year, like you would have these like joint fingers and like the face is too perfect. My face was it was the exact same face that was there. You couldn't see what was different. One thing that I feel like is you have to look very carefully for clues, but even then it's becoming harder and harder for us to talk about and decipher what is true or not. What needs to happen is more, I would say, from like policy and tech level adoption and guidelines on how AI generated images are going to be labeled, and there's a lot of different ways in which currently work is being done with that. Adobe is working on something called content credentials, and so that's like metadata within it is giving like an identity tag that this was generated by AI and automatically. TikTok right now has adopted content credentials. I'm hearing LinkedIn is adopting content credentials as well. So if somebody's automatically uploading something that is AI generated, it's within their metadata, and they are like writing that as AI generated images. So that's one way in which I see it would be that's possible.
But that only works for future stuff. That doesn't work for everything in the past that's been
No.
uploaded to the internet and to the LLMs, right?
I'm not from the past, like the past.
Yeah,
stuff, the
every photo of
metadata.
you before today.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not sure about. That's a good question, but I would assume that is from going forward, because the content credentials would be a new technology that they're adding to it.
One quick question.
situation like that you said, this one really works, it's excellent?
All those 20 examples that I showed you, every single time I use that, I think it has to be the data analysis part. The first time when Code Interpreter came out, which was I think July, August, summer of last year, and I uploaded a data set, and this was actually one of the first data sets I was playing around with. I was blown away with how quickly it was able to do that, because I spent entire master's degree learning how to code and analyze data and do all of that, and it suddenly did everything in like a matter of minutes. And that's where it actually, like, my jaw dropped. I think another second part is now you can like upload it onto ChatGPT, upload a Figma design, it'll completely convert that into code, and all you have to do is then run the code and you have a website, for example, running. Like, those features, the vision part actually gives me those jaw-dropping moments as well, because you have to understand how difficult computer vision to run that technology has been in the past few years. This is something that required a huge tech team to be able to analyze images. It's not a very easy technology, and now you are having it access at a consumer level. Anybody can access computer vision technology is mind-blowing, and I would say the GPT-4 demo that happened, any of these Google, Microsoft, and OpenAI demos, when they do it, I feel like I'm a kid on Christmas Day, because of how the advancements that happened, what GPT-4o was able to do, that real-time analysis of video and image and audio, and they're singing and doing all of that, even though it's robotic singing, but it's getting better. All of that is pretty revolutionary. I would never have imagined a couple of years ago starting my master's and thinking that this is going to be, like, you knew this was the beginning of the technology, but there's been such a spike and it's been advancing so quickly. And I need to also inform, it's not just these tools are coming out and for consumers who are using it, but even on the development side, it's absolutely crazy the amount of work and advancements that's happening on the coding side. It's changing so rapidly. If you learned something 2 years ago, it's outdated by now, and you have to like update yourself very, very quickly. So this literacy part and AI literacy part it's something that is impacting every single industry, and especially impacting coders quite a bit, because they have to keep on top of what they're learning. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Nikita. Thank you.
Yeah.